I am watching this as I am on live stream. I hope that the original creator of this video, Led, doesn't mind. And yeah, I think that's it. This video was suggested to me on a stream. It's called TF2 Maps Lost to Time, and it seemed interesting. So, if you guys can, please give a like to the original video before watching this reaction, as always. And now, click.
14 years ago, Valve held the TF2 Art Pass contest, which challenged mappers to take this unfinished Valve map and make it look pretty for a chance to have their version added to the game. In the end, there were 53 submissions and 2 winners, 3DNJ and YM, whose maps were added as Mountain Lab and Man Manor, which I'm sure
Wait. Wait, you're telling me? Wait, straight out of the bat, I'm already amazed because I did not know that these were like community submissions. You're telling me that one of the most OG Halloween maps, one of the maps that everyone plays first to be able to get like the first contracts, it's actually community made? Okay. Alright, you already. Did I leave a like on this? No, okay, this video already earned my like.
you're all familiar with. But what you may not know is that this selection process wasn't easy. It took Valve multiple days, and there were a lot of grade A submissions, which is why I made this video, to go through these versions that have largely been forgotten.
Okay, I think that this is gonna be one of those videos that I pause a lot, but oh, it took Valve multiple days. Really? To select between 53 maps, it just took them a couple of days? That doesn't seem like a lot of time.
And consider whether Valve made the right choice. Here are all 51 of them, excluding Mountain Lab and Man Manor, since we already know what those look like. I won't be giving an in-depth analysis for every submission, since that'd make this video go on forever, and
Okay.
because some things are more interesting to talk about than others. If
So-
at any point in the video you want to check these out for yourself, there'll be a download link for all of them in the description.
So we're
And
gonna
at
be
the
checking
end,
all
I
the
ask that
50
you fill
maps?
out this poll, ranking some of the better looking ones alongside Mountain Lab, so that we can come up with our own winner representative of the TF2 community.
Oh,
Alright,
because
with
it
all
wasn't
that
a
out of the
community
way,
vote, it was
let's
just
get
a
started.
Valve vote, okay.
Going in alphabetical order, our first map is by Abujam Snark. Centered around a nuclear power plant in the middle of nowhere, this map has a modest amount of detail, but is still nice to look at, especially the last point because of these glowing uranium rods. On a side note, the stairs use the displacement method I talked about in my previous video, which I think is pretty cool. The next version is by Ace Gikmo, also known today as Freya Homer. This map takes place at the center of a manufacturing district run by Blue Industries on a bright rainy day. Unlike the first map, this one is packed with
I don't know, did you guys see the way that there was like this wide open space? If we can actually play on like this little route, I don't think I like it too much. Many maps that just are just that wide and they're just open, they ended up like not being like very popular in the community because they're just like high centers for rocket jumpers and snipers, and people usually don't like maps that are just completely focused for snipers.
Industries on a bright rainy day. Unlike the first map, this one is packed with detail. So much in fact that it's impossible for me to go through everything in this video, so I highly recommend exploring this map for yourself. But I will say that it's possibly the best looking one out of all 51 I'll be showing. The cacti are a nice detail that helps depict the biome. Custom normal maps add shape to many of the
Okay,
wet
that's
surfaces.
cool. That's a cool
The
detail.
3D
I like
skybox
it.
blends seamlessly with the rest of the map,
see the water?
and the
I like that
overall
too.
creativity, talent, and originality, all from a single person, is something you rarely see in TF2 maps nowadays. I wish I could go on, but there
I didn't like that so much. You guys see like the way that there's like these
something you
big
rarely
plants.
see
I think that maps that are overly detailed with like the bushes that you have around is just like something that can confuse the players a lot. Detail is nice, but if it is like to be this much detailed, I think that it'll be a little bit confusing to play around. You know, there will be like too much detail to focus on. Some of the maps that we have, that are just the most replayed maps. For example, Dust Bowl, they're very minimalistic. They're very like narrow, and they don't have like a lot of white spaces for people to just like shoot through long distances. Just so like if we exclude the first like point from like Dust Bowl, that would be the case. But in general, those are like the factors that just like keep players into like coming back to the map. I don't know if this would be like the favorite pick of the community,
in TF2
even
maps
though the narrator
nowadays.
says that
I
this is
wish I
like
could
the
go
best
on,
like
but there are still
map wise when
49
it
other
comes to
maps to
detail.
cover. so let's give them a chance. Next is our first night map by Balloons 4600. Unfortunately, not much was done here, so it doesn't look great, but it's still worth mentioning as it was a submission for the contest. Now we have our first snow map by
You know what that actually reminded me of? It actually reminded me of like one of those games that you needed to go around and collect things. You know, the TF2 version of Slenderman. Because like dark maps always like have that sense of edginess that the horror maps in TF2 have. I don't know, but it
Unfortunately,
reminded me
not
of
much
that.
was done here, so it doesn't look great, but it's still worth mentioning as it was a submission for the contest.
And I like the background
Now
beat
we
that he
have our
has on the
first snow
video.
map by Bimos, a big deviation from the warmer climates we were just in. This map is striking for its glaciers that towered over the first half and the Arctic desert that surrounds it. But outside of that, there isn't anything cool to see besides this lava room around the last point that looks like tomato sauce. Cranking up the heat, we
I
have
like
a
snow
drastic
maps.
change of scenery
Ooh,
with
now
this
that
map
looks
by
good.
Cakeman. If you're
Now
a fan
that
of
is
Buried
looking
from
good.
Black
I
Ops 1
like that.
Zombies, you'll love this map.
So far, this
It's
is my
an
favorite.
old western mining facility squeezed into these desert canyons and has a lot of unique brush and detail work that make it stand.
Dude, look at he's right. Look at that like paint like a brush detail into the skin of the map, you know, like the details. This looks amazing, and the lighting as well. It's very well done.
Out from the other maps. It's a little bare at times, but is by no means bad.
No, but that's what I'm saying. The name of the map is Cakeman. I think that the more minimalistic the map is with like these like a more toned down colors, the better it looks. It helps like the blue and the red from the mercenaries actually just stand out more. So I think that the by far this was like the best job when it comes to implementing a map that the players would be able to naturally distinguish like where they need to go and who they need to shoot in the game. That's
Black Ops
actually
1
a great
Zombies,
addition.
you'll love this map. It's an old western mining facility squeezed into these desert canyons
Honestly,
and
my
has
favorite
a lot
so
of
far.
unique brush and detail work
Best
that
one.
make it stand out from the other maps. It's a little bare at times, but is by no means bad. Moving on, there's this map by COTC, which reminds me of Gravel Pit, but with more color and saturation. Many of the
I
textures,
don't know, it seems a little
scaling,
bit bland.
lighting, and overall design choices are a bit wacky, but I like the overall theme of the map as an open pit mine, and these minecart tracks above the last point. They're rather creative. Speaking of creative,
I don't know, I
this
didn't
map
like that
by
one that much.
Crusader is nothing short of it, being the first of 3 space-themed maps we'll be looking at. It resembles a moon base, apparent by the gray, dusty landscape and giant Earth in the 2D skybox. There's also a huge glowing dome, which I presume acts as
One kind of sad thing about like a TF2 and space maps is that they usually don't get that popular. You know, every single map that I remember, and I will not remember the names, just like to just add weight to my point. People don't play them that much, you know, because people just try to customize like the idea of being spaces so much that it gets a little bit overwhelming to what is the general gameplay that the people are used on TF2. So that's why they don't get that popular.
as an airlock so that the mercs can breathe. Now, despite having a super cool setting, some nice lights, and cute moon signs, there's not a whole lot of detail, and the architecture is a bit too simple for my liking. You'll see what I mean when we get to the other 2 versions. Next is another snow map by Cynic.
Missing
It suffers
textures?
from some missing textures,
Yeah.
but let's put that aside. The wind and snowfall is extreme, blowing sideways through the map. The interior detailing and framing around the first half of the map looks okay, and I really like these windows that face blue spawn. The area outside of the map around the second point is also cool, but not as cool as these walls of
No,
ice
that
by
is
the
nice.
last point that emit fog and sparkles.
No,
They're
that is
kind of
actually cool. That is
oversaturated
actually
and out
cool.
of place, but look pretty. Where this map struggles is with its architecture. The
Hmm.
building exteriors are too simplistic and could benefit from some extra detail. The map by DeBeats project is up there near
Honestly, if he had managed to just make like a more like a visual interesting like architecture, just like he did with like the ice, you know, for the final bit, it would have looked way better. And on this one, I already like the skyline.
Ace Gikmos as one of my personal favorites for its creativity and level of detail around the first half. It features many twists and turns through a rocky cliff environment with a small bit of water at the base. The mapper also took some creative liberties with the layout around the last point, so it'd be interesting to see how this map plays out in an actual game.
I
My
don't,
only criticism is that the interior see how this map
dude,
plays
I
out.
don't like this so much. You know, like you see, like the last point, I don't like when there's a lot of space for people to just have the high ground, because on the Thunder Mountain map, you have like a half moon of like of a second floor per se. You know, for the final point, you know what I'm talking about. And that already makes it very hard for the enemy team or the red team in this occasion to be able to defend it. But to have like a complete circle just makes this very bad for like the defensive team, the red team, to be able to win. I don't know. I'm not a fan of just very like a large and long, just like high ground positions.
In an actual game. My only criticism is that the interior of the last point doesn't match the levels seen in the rest of the map, which leaves me to assume that it was rushed. But as a whole, this is a great looking map. Next is one of only 2 swamp maps by Draco 18S. As you'd expect, it features swamp fog, trees, plants, and
Interesting.
water, which I'll admit is cool since the only other map where we currently see this is
I
part of the
was
zombie
about
infection
to
group.
mention this
But
map.
in this case, they hinder visibility and the rest of the map doesn't look finished. So although the
Dude, like I was about to like to compare like the map to the zombie map. I think that snipers will enjoy this so much because of like the fog and everything. But I think that it could be a good map, especially for Halloween.
theme is unique, I don't think it's anywhere near as good as it could be. With that said, I
Oh,
still like
missing
the missing texture
textures.
gators under the last point. This next map by Froggy has a similar dark and gloomy aesthetic, but more closely resembles Landfall or
I
Sawmill
was about
because of these
to
pine
mention
trees.
Sawmill. I was
It's a
about
simple
to.
map that makes decent use of TF2's default assets and art style, and I love this building behind the second point. There's also some lava under the last point that's visible from some of the neighboring rooms and halls, but the fact that it's raining directly into the pit doesn't make much sense. This map by Fubar FX is unlike anything you've ever seen. It takes place
I mean, just like a commenting on this. Maybe the decision to just leave that open, it would be to just release like the heat and to not like get the heat all stuck into like the inside of the base, or maybe it's just because it kind of was naturally formed like that. I mean, it's just running on the entire map. And maybe you can disagree on that, but I can see this as being a natural like exhaustion point from like the lava.
This map by Fubar FX is unlike anything you've ever seen. It takes place on an island with a giant shipwreck, so the map is built upon the
Okay,
idea of being stranded or secluded on a remote island with
that
limited
looks cool. That
resources.
looks cool.
The rock formations on the outside are beautifully shaped, but the caves are my favorite part. They're decorated with stalactites and stalagmites and hold water that flows into this large pool at the center, plus 1 for creativity.
Honestly, I would say that I really enjoyed that map, but the one problem that I would give is that since like the whole like environment seems to be extremely gray, it seems like it to be an easy map to get lost on. And by the way, is it just me that I kind of see like a Godzilla face on this with the eye, the nose, and the teeth? You know, a cartoonish Godzilla. Is it just me?
Limited
But yeah,
resources.
moving
The
on.
rock formations on the
See, it
outside
just
are beautifully
seems like
shaped,
a
but
very
the
very
caves are
bland and
my
easy to
favorite
get
part.
lost in as a
They're
player.
decorated with stalactites and stalagmites and hold water that flows into this large pool at the center, plus 1 for creativity. Next up is another foresty pine map by Gerbil. It looks
Let's
to be
see.
in the business of logging, but has a softer feel. The buildings are tall, and the little bits of detail that cover them keep them from looking
I
bland.
like the mix of
I like
colors.
how the mapper detailed many areas with respect to the theme, like the saw room and these wood chips. The area around the second point looks good too, with its unique brushwork.
It seems
I
very
can't
polished.
tell what the room around the last point is for, but it's much more industrial, apparent by all of the bricks and machinery. This
Okay, I
map
like
by
this one.
Fuba is another western themed mine full of detail that conveys a gold mining operation. But just wait, things are about to get crazy. The
Alright.
architecture and environment around the first and second points are remarkable. There's so much going on all over the place, and each area is interesting and immersive. Looking at the sky, there's a massive volumetric cloud rolling in that blocks light from reaching the outside of the map. I have literally never seen something like this done before. Already, mappers should be taking notes, but this is where things get crazy. Moving into the building around the last point, the
Kinda
theme
looks like a
suddenly
Star Wars
changes
ship.
into this high-tech scientific laboratory where we see some serious equipment and a mysterious blue substance. It looks like the gold mining operation is just a cover-up for something much more valuable. This map by Grazer, on the other hand,
I will say that I think it's interesting to just add like this change of like a scenario, you know, to fit like some hidden lore for the map. But like the hard like switch up between being a mining town and a heavy like a scientific like map, it feels a little bit weird to me. I don't think that it would be a vibe for me. I don't know. Like it's a personal choice. I might have people that disagree with me, but I don't think that looked as cool as the narrator made it sound like.
Is all about wheat. It's surrounded by wheat fields and stuffed with hay. The area is industrialized with a fair amount of buildings and ore chutes that give it a slightly different vibe from Harvest, despite being similarly
I
themed.
like Harvest.
There's also a giant pumpkin hooked up to some jumper cables under the last point that explodes when you capture it. And that's
Interesting.
pretty much it. On to our second space map. This one is by Grim Tuesday and takes place in the middle of space instead of on the moon. So the entire map is a giant spaceship. It has a futuristic design, and
It
I
seems
think
very
the glass on the
empty.
floors is super cool, but again, the buildings, or walls of the ship should I say, are mostly bare and honestly don't make any sense. But I appreciate the effort put into making this considering how unique it is.
Yeah, this is another problem with like space maps. Is that like every single space maps that you see, they need to be clean. They're supposed to be clean. So far, I don't remember seeing like any TF2 video that showcases like a space like station or a space rocket or any space map that has a more rough look. You know, that show that people actually live around here and people had to adapt to living in this place. I don't know, it just seems too clean and too empty.
Next, we have another logging facility by Groovy Pants. However, this map, like several others in this list, is completely unfinished, so I'm gonna skip it and move on to the
Oh,
next
poor guy,
one
he
by
didn't finish it.
Helljumper, which is the polar opposite of unfinished. The map is themed
Another
after
night
Gravel
map?
Pit, but is so much more than an adaptation. Every
Okay.
corner of every room has something going on, and the rocky terrain is littered with various props and foliage. One could even argue that there's too much detail,
Interesting.
particularly with this cluster of junk next to the second point. Everywhere
No, no,
else
no, no. I think that that's good because on Thunder Mountain, yeah, as I said, like there's a lot of like a wide, long spaces that just create like this beautiful scenario for snipers to just like stay in one position. I think in having those debris in the middle just makes like an interesting balance, especially for people who want to try to advance and for engineers to try to protect like sentry guns. So I think this is a nice change.
though, I think is fine. The last point is a good example of detailing an open area without adding any obstructions. While simplistic in some parts, it doesn't seem like anything is missing. Maybe there could be some railings here like we see on Mountain Lab, but that's nitpicking. The last thing I want to quickly point out about this map is the bubbling pit of lava under the last point. Check out what
Looks
happens when I
better.
jump into it. Now that's the kind of creativity we need to see more of in TF2 maps. Moving on,
like
we
it.
have
I
another
like
farm
it.
map by Honey Mustard.
Oh no,
This
this
one
looks
looks
great.
a lot more like Harvest than Grazer's map and has a simple yet comforting aesthetic.
Wait.
The buildings have
Honey mustard. Haven't I heard about the name before? I feel like I have seen that name in either an animation video or like a map like video. I feel like we've seen maps from this like creator before. Where have I seen it before? If you guys know, please let me know in the comments after the video because I really have like a ring to my head saying that I've heard that name before.
nice
But the map
brushwork,
looks great.
the prop placement works well, and the map as a whole feels right. There's nothing extraordinary about
Looks
it,
good.
but I don't think simplicity is necessarily a bad thing because in this case, it just works.
No, honestly, it looks beautiful. So far, I am close to say that this is like the number 2 map for me. I still think that the what was it? No, it was not Ace. It was not Ball. Not this. Oh, I think that it was. Oh yeah, Cake Man and Honey Mustard. I think that those are the best maps. Cake Man being first and the Honey Mustard in second.
Next is our second night map by Huckle, which I believe is a power plant, and it being night makes me feel like I'm trespassing. One of my favorite parts about this map is the wall of machinery in the 3D skybox because it means business. Moving inside around the last point, the theme is maintained. The floors
It doesn't
are
seem to
concrete
change too
and
much from the
stairs
original map.
metal. Lastly, the pit under the point looks like some sort of back rooms thing with its endless number of floors.
Interesting.
Sort of like this next map by Jack8B11. It's a hybrid between a swamp and a factory, and uses the same assets as the other swamp map we saw by Draco18S, and feels kinda weird, but I have to give it
I don't know. So far, maps that try to be darker, you know, with the lighting in the theme, usually Usually they don't like represent the majority of the maps that we have in the current casual list. So I don't know. I feel like if you go for a dark team into a competition like this, the map is not gonna be selected.
Give it to the mapper, visibility isn't a problem here, and the architecture is unique, especially the interior portion around the last point. I'm not sure about the wavy trim on the walls, or these pipes jutting out of the ground outside of red spawn,
Feels
but
a little
I
bit
like
weird,
the
yes.
dynamic element of the spinning wheel, flowing water, and blinking lights. I find this next map by Kunsa very cool,
Ooh,
or should
look
I
at
say
look at the
hot,
color.
because it takes place in the middle of Australia. The buildings aren't
Australia.
anything special, rather it's the orange ground and kangaroos within a 69-kilometer radius that
Nice.
makes this map what it is. I mean, just look at those roos over there hopping along.
Also,
It even features some custom
I like
sounds
this.
that provide extra ambience.
I like the
red
color
rocks
change.
extend all the way to the last point through all of the halls, so you can experience the best of Australia the entire time.
Honestly, I think that this might be like the top three for me because if it makes me feel like I'm in a mesa biome in Minecraft, you know, just because of like the heavy colors that we see in it.
But seriously, I love this map just for its setting. Everything else is kind of a bonus. Our next map is by Languid and features some extreme terrain reminiscent of Upward. Because of that, it feels very open, like you're in the middle of nowhere. It's got your standard Western architecture with not much detail to look at, but I like how the mapper opened up the area around the last point to the outside, especially this flank off to the side that we're used to seeing indoors. Similar to Cake Man's map, Lattes takes place buried under the surface. It's a lot darker since the second part of the map is completely underground, so it uses these spotlights to light up the area, though I think some parts are still too dark. Besides that, there isn't much else to see. It's pretty standard stuff, though I will point out these missiles outside of Red Spawn that look like they're about to be deployed to start World War III. On to our only other swamp map, we have this version
Okay,
by
this
Little
looks
Dude
better.
that is
This
very
swamp
similar to
looks
Draco's,
way
but
more
a
heavy
little
on the
better in my
ambience.
opinion.
I
It
agree.
uses the same swamp assets, but they're not overly obstructive. I still think the fog is a bit too strong, but only by a little. My favorite part about this map is the second point area with
Oh,
these
so it's with
barricades
water,
lining the top
right?
of this cliff. While this kind of land formation doesn't make sense for a swamp, I think it has a cool effect. But the interior of the last point is pretty bare bones, so let's move on to
Yeah.
the next map. This one is by Mac GTA, and man is it bright. It's clearly some sort of quarry or mining facility, but is rather empty. Most of the buildings are patched together with sheets of metal, and that's about it. Pretty standard stuff. Next is this map by Mangy, a quirky factory surrounded by hilly wheat fields.
Oh, that's
I say it's
actually
quirky
nice.
because of the peculiar brushwork and layout. It deviates greatly from the base map. In many respects, it doesn't even feel like Mountain Lab. And if I had to attribute it to one thing, it'd probably be these diagonal buildings. We don't usually see them in TF2 maps. Again, I value the mapper's creativity, but the
Honestly, I think this is the first time that I've seen someone put like a map in the middle of like a hills, like surrounding the base like that. I don't remember any other like that. There might have been like maps that they just put like some mountains in the distance on one side, but they put a more plain view on the other side to balance it out. So interesting.
The proximity and scale of certain things feel a little disorienting. I think if the mapper went through and blocked things out better,
Oh,
this
this
would
is
be
a
a
circle
great
or
map.
like the last
The
point.
next three maps are
Feels
by
weird.
Mapmaker1, Marquis Posa, and Mr. Yellow. And I'm gonna save everyone the time and say that these maps are just retextured versions of the base given by Valve. There are few, if any, extra details or props added in, so
this
it'd be a
is-
waste of time
it
for me
looks
to go
very,
through
very
and
low
analyze
quality.
each one.
It looks like
Mr.
something you would
Happy's
see.
map, on the other hand, is
It looks like something you'd see like in Team Fortress Classic, like a remastered to Team Fortress 2.
the third and final space one. Just like in Crusader's version,
more
it takes
detailed.
place on the moon. It's also way more detailed and immersive, with the best brushwork and prop placement I've ever seen for a space map. And it isn't just this way on the
Interesting.
outside. The halls around the last point are filled with tons of things, which in of
Nice.
itself is a sight to behold.
Nice.
If any of you are thinking about making a moon or space map and need inspiration, this is probably the best thing out there. This map is
No, really. For a moment, I even forgot that we're analyzing a map that is supposed to be like a thunder melt. You know, it felt so different that for a moment I truly forgot we were just analyzing all the maps being like the same base.
By
You know?
name here and looks exactly like Sawmill.
Yeah.
Not that that's a bad thing, the mapper did a flawless job at maintaining the same theme and reusing
I don't know. Dark
assets. He
maps
also
are
took
harder
many creative
to be
liberties with
like
the
open for
layout
me.
that make it feel much different from Mountain Lab, at least until you get to the last point, where unfortunately hardly anything was done. The next map is by Nanosheep Korra,
Oh,
which,
it
just
is
like the
not
three maps I
finished.
mentioned before Mr. Happy's, is a simple retexture and nothing more. Next is this map by Patazzo that returns us to the farm theme. It reminds me of Two Fort if it were a little more industrialized.
I can
Even
see
moving
that. I agree.
inside toward the last point, the halls look exactly the same as Two Fort's intel area. And yeah, that's all I have to say about it.
So basically, this map is like the junction of what if we picked a 2 fort and pushed it somewhere else?
This is Click Clack's map, potentially the worst out of all 51 maps. And
Really?
I don't say that to roast the guy, but to point out what you shouldn't do when making a map. The texturing doesn't make any sense, the buildings are shaped awkwardly, and there are Half-Life assets that not only are super obstructive, but don't fit TF2's art style whatsoever. The cube maps also aren't built, which is why you can see the 2D skybox in the reflection of all shiny objects on the map. This is why it's
Wow.
important to understand the fundamentals when building a map. Things can quickly fall apart if you don't. Unfortunately, this next map by Rewind suffers from a lot of missing textures, which is a shame because it has some wild architecture that I'm sure would have looked epic. Putting that aside, it looks like this map is
Even
a
hurts
giant
my
mining
eyes.
operation with a complex rail system. It even has an elevator that transports
That's
these
cool.
minecarts.
That's
I
cool.
wish I could say more, but I don't think I can fairly judge this map in its current state, so I'll have to leave it at that. Moving on, we have this map by Ritz, with a more industrial yet fresh feel to it. It could be because
Oh, what is the name of the map? I forgot. We played it today on stream, but like the grass, like the whole color reminds me of like
of its
I forgot.
location
Maybe
up in the
Swift Water.
mountains
I don't
or the
know.
plethora of pines,
But it
but
reminds me
I
of a
think it's
TF2
mainly
map. I
because of the
don't know the
bright green
name.
grass and white brick buildings. There's a nice waterfall over by the second point, which is inside of
Okay, wait. I need to look again at that waterfall.
and white brick buildings. There's a nice
I think this is like the best waterfall that I've ever seen in TF2. Honestly, it looks amazing.
waterfall over by the second point, which is inside of a large tent, which gives me camping vibes. This sort of vanishes as we move inside around the last point,
it's
which,
very
like many
bland.
of the other maps in this list, is largely unfinished. But it's got some fossils on the walls and a cool dinosaur skull hanging under the point, which isn't something you see every day. Next is another simple retexture by Slevin. Bear with me here, there will only be a couple more, and there is still more amazing stuff coming up. At long last, we have our next snow-themed map, this time by Sniper Penguin. What separates this from the rest of the cold maps in this list is the commonness of the snow falling and how it glitters on the ground.
Okay,
There
that's
are
cool.
also icicles and snow-covered rocks, and a few other textures that complement the setting. Just like in
Nice.
Click Clack's map though, the Q maps aren't built, which screws up the overall look of many areas. But
Yeah.
putting that aside, I love how the snow trickles through this giant hole above the last point.
Yeah, see, like that's what I'm saying. Like the exhaustion part of like this map is located at the final part, and it can give like some interesting looks to it. It's quite a shame that the interior was not more heavily changed on this one, because having more of a theme of like Christmas or something like that, it would really like change like how we see the end of the map.
This next map by Soylent Robot goes back to the factory setting and is particularly interesting because
It reminds me of MVM.
of the variety of structures in brick, wood, metal, and concrete all meshed together to form not just factory, but office and residential buildings as well. Inside of the buildings is your standard machinery, concrete floors, and brick walls. My favorite part of this map is the area around the last point because it's exposed to the sky and gives you an up-close view of the smokestacks. Overall, this is a diverse and interesting map. Here, we have another factory theme map by Spiral Shot, but with a much gloomier tone. Dark clouds hang over the map with distant smokestacks, power lines, and buildings covered in fog. But the props in the map have to be the most creative out of any similarly themed map in this list. They're laid out in ways I'm not used to seeing, and there are pipes literally everywhere. But here's the best part. There's a conveyor belt transporting Bonk Atomic Punch across the entire map. It starts out here by the last point as empty aluminum cans, then comes down to this pool of purple liquid where it's turned into the punch, and from there transported to this room where it's packaged
Honestly,
into boxes and eventually shipped out of blue spawn. The only downside is that this version of the map is missing all of the custom textures, so I can only imagine what all of this originally looked like.
honestly, I would say that if I discovered that this was a thing in one map, I would join the map just to see the flux of the bonk. And this would 100% be a scout maze like letter of love to bonk.
Nonetheless,
I
I
like the
love how
idea.
it conveys a story, and
I
I'd
agree.
love to
That
see
looks
other
cool.
maps follow a similar suit. Next is what I consider
Also, can you guys imagine like if we actually had this map into the rotation, we would be able to see like ST Black ST and other like animators just using that map to create stories, most likely about Scout. Damn, it's quite a shame that that one didn't got added or finished.
the happiest map of the bunch from Spud. It's bright, full of plant life, the buildings are well constructed, the surrounding farmland is green and healthy,
I like that.
and there's a little bit of water here that runs into a river. I love how the mapper turned this corner into a sort of canopy. It's just so cozy. The map is a winery, so there are tons of wine barrels neatly stacked around the place. And the area around the last point is clean and occupied with fancy machinery for treating this giant pool of wine under the point. This map is so pretty, it might just be my favorite one on the list. The next two maps by Sunshine and Sven are the last of the bunch that are simple retextures. So now that we've got those out of the way, we can wrap things up with some top tier maps.
Let's
The
do it
first
then, I'm
being this
ready.
one by Swords. The environment is
Ooh.
the same as in a map like Gold Rush, but is in no way boring. Every inch of the place is rich with detail. In fact, again, just like in Helljumper's map, there might be a little too much in some parts. But I think that's a better problem to have than not having enough.
Yeah, I think that the grass is a little bit too much, but I
For
like
instance, it's
the
always
lighting of this place. It feels like it's truly at the end of the afternoon. As soon as the sun is about to go start setting, the map is just massively shaded. Good
easier
job.
to remove than to create. This level of detail extends all the way to the last point
Look at
too,
this.
which
Looks
houses a
great.
massive drill. Overall, I think this is one of the best maps and could very well be the best if its lanes were cleaned up a bit. Our next map by Terabytus
That might be on my
is
top
another
3 now, I
top
don't
tier
know.
entry that I think is largely due to its environment. The grass and trees are orange, and so are the
Guys, look at this. Oh, this is beautiful. Whoever did this, oh my god, I really want to see more work from this person. Who did he say it was? Terabyte Test? Look at the way that he did the lighting on this. This is masterfully done. Good job.
rays shooting through the clouds in the 2D skybox. If that didn't already give you fall vibes, there are a couple of
like
greenhouses
the art
out
too.
behind a second point with some pumpkins. Nothing is flashy or oversaturated, which I appreciate because it's easy to get carried away when working with such colors. Despite all of this, the area around the last point is my favorite, with how all of these different buildings face the center almost like a courtyard, similar to Gooba's map, which is why I consider it to be one of the best on the list. On to our third top tier map in a row. This one is by Timber Ghost and takes a cool twist on the snow theme. It's based way up near the North Pole, with massive glaciers and mountains on one side.
I don't know about
and
this
a
one.
partially frozen ocean
It
with
feels
icebergs on the other.
overcomplicated with
There's
this no
even a
theme.
huge ship beached on the shore, and a cargo one out on the water. But as if that wasn't enough, the custom textures take this map even further. From these vibrant corrugated metal walls to the wood flooring in the rooms around the last point with custom walking sounds, this map is truly original. Perhaps the best part is how its beauty and charm don't come from any quirky gimmicks or tacky textures like cute animals or glowing ice, but from practicality. Everything that's here makes
Okay,
sense
that's cool.
and is
I like
believable.
the
An
solar
example
panels.
of perfect map design. This next map is special.
Right, I think that this might be like a bad take, but I didn't feel like the urge to play that one. If like the narrator just so highly recommended the map and so highly said that this was a very good map, should be a reason for me to want to play that map. I think on this case it was not enough for me. I don't know. I might not be just like the biggest fan of snowy maps, or maybe because we saw a lot of snowy maps. I prefer more flashy maps, when it comes to the colors, and I like more green and or maybe autumn than I like snow. So just a bad personal
because
take,
it
I
comes from
imagine.
somebody I'm sure all of us mappers know. UEAK Crash. Now,
How's
I'm
that?
not going to beat around the bush. This map is rudimentary and doesn't come anywhere close to the level of the other maps I've just shown. But at the very least, it's cool that he was involved in mapping that long ago and threw his name into the pool. He's also worked on some great stuff since then, so by no means would I consider this map to be a representation of his skills today.
Wait, he made this map? He actually got his map into like the Halloween rotation? Oh, congrats!
That being said, I wonder what he would do if he came back to it today. Perhaps it'd make for a cool
Wait, did he
educational
quit?
video series. Inching toward the finish line, there's this map by Wurgle, which isn't a simple retexture, but is still bad considering how blocky, simplistic, and
And dark,
unnatural all of the
yeah,
buildings look.
it feels
And
very
although
unnatural.
the blue lights add some interest, they don't have any sources. But as bad as the map is, at least the mapper tried something instead of simply retexturing everything. Next is another factory by X-Funk Carter, but this
Looks
one
better.
is different from all the others we've seen. For one, it's ruined in certain parts as you'd expect with an old factory, and a couple of these ruined spots are actually lanes to other parts of the map, which I find creative. There's also
agree.
a building over here in the process of being built, some barricading on the ruined side of this one, and residential and office buildings off in the distance, all of which complement each other. Moving inside of the factory, things
Ooh,
get
he
even
actually looks
better.
abandoned.
It's like the map
Nice.
well, but bigger, better, and
Wait, look at this lighting. Dude, it's
actually
like
looks like a
some of the people that work on this, they do such a great job in lighting. This is like the thing that really gets me to enjoy a map. How well they like just took the tone of the light to just reflect all around it. That's
factory or
nice.
warehouse.
Look at this.
I'm a sucker for brick architecture, so
Look at that.
I'm in love with this map. Last but not least, we have this night map by Zero Rogue.
Okay,
But
looks
instead
nice.
of being lit up exclusively by spotlights, it has these light bulbs hanging
I
around
like
the
that,
place that give it a fun social vibe, which happens to be the most appealing thing to me about this map. Though there are a few other cool things worth showing, like this large dam sitting behind Blue Spawn, and these two tents pitched around a campfire by the second point. But that's basically it, as the area around the last point isn't that cool.
I need
But
to see this
instead of
again.
being lit up
I need to see this
exclusively
again.
by spotlights, it has these light
Honestly, like watching a map like this, I could 100% just imagine a party taking place in this place with different like blue and red members and maybe even other teams. I don't know, but this is such a vibe for me.
bulbs
I
hanging
like
around
this
the
light bulb
place
like
that give it a
architecture.
fun social vibe, which happens to be the most appealing thing to me about this map. Though there are a few other cool things worth showing, like this large dam sitting behind Blue Spawn, and these two tents
Sorry.
pitched around a campfire by the second point. But that's basically it, as the area around the last point isn't that cool. I mean, I can see what the mapper was going for, but the detailing could be better.
It kind of looks
So
like
that's
a disco.
all 51 maps condensed in one video. I'd pick out my favorite, but I'm curious to see what you guys think. So please fill out the poll linked in the description so we can see who the community at large thinks should have won.
Oh, honestly, for me, Cakeman should have won. Cakeman should have won. Like this map just seems to be exactly like the type of map that I wanted like in TF2. It's bright, it's not overly saturated with a lot of colors all around. It's simplistic, it fits the vibe, and it makes it easy to distinguish between red and blue. I really like this map. Second place for me, it would be from where are you, honey? Where are you? Honey. I think it was Honey Mustard the name. Oh, here it is. Honey Mustard, yeah. For me, Honey Mustard is like the second best one. Like I really like these these sort of colors, that are not too much. They seems like more toned down colors, and I think that they did a great job. And lastly, I think it was the one that mimicked Harvest. But it's also quite a shame that we were not able to see like. No, wait. I don't know. It's between Harvest and this one because I really enjoyed this skybox. I really think it's a beautiful skybox. But if you guys can, please let me know what you guys think. Once again, this video was made by LED. So if you can, please sure to give a like to the original video. It's linked down below. LED, if you watch this, I hope you don't mind reaction channels. And great video. Thank you for bringing back like this lost piece of media to TF2 and to our attention. Give a like to the original video as said, and I'll see you guys next time. Okay? Bye. See ya. Have you considered becoming a patron or a member of the channel? Links down below.